Hey guys.
Hey, how are you?
Hey everyone.
Hello.
Oh, so many people already in chat. Hey everyone, welcome. Wow. Here we go. Let me scroll down. Hey Lynn. Hey Melissa Jade. And for everyone who's new, welcome to Unmasked. We've got two really special guests with us tonight. I'm really excited about this one. Of course, we have Mike from Profiling Evil, who you all probably know, and we have Amanda from Rising Above LoveHasWonCult. So thank you guys so much for being here tonight.
Gosh, what a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Vanessa.
And I'm pretty sure, of course, everyone knows Mike, but just for those who are new, could we start with you and just kind of go over your background and your expert in cults?
Oh, thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I have a little YouTube channel called Profiling Evil, and we look at true crime cases. I love the fact that I get to collaborate with folks like you, Vanessa. It makes it really exciting to be able to work with everyone in this community. I have come from a law enforcement career, retired as a police investigator. During my career, I spent the majority of my time looking at closed societies, particularly polygamous groups, child sex abuse cults, ritual crime. I led a unit, a ritual crime unit, where we, under direction of the legislature, pursued about 300 allegations of satanic worship and ritual crime, and that kind of launched my career in a direction that I wasn't prepared to go, but has become much of my life, and work in technology today.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. And I let him know I was going to do this because I have to. I was telling him I never have time to read anymore since the channel's kind of exploded a little bit. But I did start this book. I love it so far. I'm trying to, plow through it before Thursday, but it's so good. And I put the link. You guys, I'd encourage you to go to the links in the description, because I do have Mike's book. I was lucky enough to get a copy. And it's really good, and it's exactly what we're talking about for the next 2 weeks. So I'd really encourage you to go check this out. I know some other people on our admin team have it too and love it. So I had to do that because I love it.
That's really nice that, number one, that you would read it, and anyone that does, thank you so much. Deceived was actually written about a cult that was sexually abusing children, and it took me 30 years to actually write the book, but I did it at the prompting of some of the 32 children that we rescued in that cult, and we have today have a wonderful relationship with the survivors, who are now women in their 40s, and it's been just delightful. But the book was set apart to tell their stories and explain some of the characteristics of cult behavior, and so hopefully folks will enjoy it when they read it. Know that the majority of the funds that we earn from this is going to help build a new children's justice center, a place where children who are victimized in cults or in any kind of a sexual abuse or physical abuse can get forensic interviews done. They can get medical counseling. They can get the entire process done in one location, kind of in a grandma looking environment where they don't feel so threatened like going to a police station. So anyway, enough of that.
Well, and since you brought that up, I have to say, if you guys have not seen the episode that he was just talking about, there's an episode of Dr. Phil where he's reunited with the victims as adults. You have to go check that out. We all watched that.
Made me cry like a baby.
Yep. We did too, watching it. We all watched it and cried too. It's a great episode. And we also have Amanda, who I had the honor of speaking to a couple times. She's an amazing woman and a warrior for the cause. So welcome, Amanda. It's so nice to have you on here.
Thank you. So I'm Amanda, and a lot of people don't understand or know my story and how I'm connected to Love Has Won. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in and share my story. So my brother found Love Has Won last year, March 2020. And in May of 2020, he decided to go on a spiritual mission trip with the Love Has Won group. And he was the man that was missing in the mountains in Salida. So any of you that have been following along Love Has Won have probably read an article about his experience. And thankfully, he was found by a stranger. His story itself was very powerful. But essentially, out of that, we created the Rising Above Love Has Won group from our experience working with leading cult experts and learning so much about coercive control. And most importantly, how to just effectively communicate with my brother and help with his healing on his experience, because everybody's experience is different, of course. And so we just created this wonderful website of resources, which is risingabove.lhw.com. And this just network of community where we've really come together. So myself, and I do not work alone, I have a wonderful team, and we've really connected with a lot of people behind the Love Has Won exposed page, as well as some people over on Reddit. And we've just created this very powerful group of people that have connected with both loved ones of former members, current members, some current members themselves that we've helped to get them home, as well as former members. And it's really just been a great pool of this unity of people and individuals that have been connected to Love Has Won. So my role has really just been to provide this ongoing support and education and awareness for anyone that's been connected. And that's how I've had the opportunity to be here today. So very brief overview.
Well, I wanted to say really quick before we get too deep, I'm over there almost every day now. I'm over there, and on the what's the other page? It's Love Has Won Exposed. I'm on there almost daily, and pretty much all of our group and admin's been checking that out. If you guys haven't been over there, again, I have the links. I really would encourage you, especially between this week and next week, to go over there, watch their videos. I think you'll be surprised. I was go through the pages, join the pages. But I did want to tell you, you guys are an amazing group of people. The one thing I was struck by when I started going over there was that even though there's such an emotional tie, and a lot of you have personal, stories with them, and I'm sure a lot of anger, resentment, emotions wrapped up, the whole group really is completely respectful and empathetic and compassionate at the same time, as being direct and informative. And it's really an impressive and amazing group of people. I don't know how you manage that balance, but you do.
No, thank you. We appreciate it. I mean, no one person could do this. And I think that we really just rely on each other. And unless you've experienced something related and connected to Love Has Won, no matter if you were a member yourself, or you had a loved one, or you knew a friend, right? Like, no one else can relate. So you feel closest with those that are able to relate. And there are so many powerful topics within Love Has Won, all the way from Amy down to these members, that are important and they need to be shared. And so we do try our best to be respectful of all of those involved. And it's, always growing and just trying to get people to recognize coercive control, how it works, and to really kind of shift their thought process on what they think is happening, because that's such a big misconception. Most people just will get on Love Has Won Exposed and see this video and be like, who are, it's so obvious. Why would you let somebody treat you like this? And it's very complicated and it's very deep. So yeah, I'm personally thankful for the entire community, for the entire team that I work with. It's been an incredible last year for me, that we've worked hard every single day to be a place of support, compassion, but also to highlight the dangers that are within this group. Yeah.
So do you feel, for those that haven't followed it, can you share what happened with your brother and that story with us?
Yes. So my brother is a conspiracy theorist, and he was a totally normal guy. He had a 6-figure salary, $500,000 house, beautiful family, totally normal. No, we're not talking mental health issues. We're not talking substance abuse. And last year, March 2020, right, is when COVID really hit. The pandemic hit our country. And so one of the things with Love Has Won is a lot of this new age spiritual talk and activities that I myself am interested in and I myself can relate to. But something that they also have done is whatever's kind of trending, right? So they'll kind of plant these seeds and they'll share their live streams in a lot of groups. So my brother found them online in a group, started following them in March, booked a session, which is also known as an etheric surgery. And it's essentially a phone call with one of their members, and really just after that moment was very committed to them and felt that he needed to go be with Amy and with the team for this imminent ascension. So the ascension is that we were ascending this planet into New Earth or into 5D. So many people have different thoughts on that. Okay. Really what it is it's a higher frequency. So if you were to ask me what 5D means to me, we're ascending where you are just doing self-growth within, and you are, retraining your thoughts. And it's basically the universal law of attraction, right? You do good, you actually live from a place of love, and that comes back to you. And it's really just elevating that vibration on the planet so that we live in a more peaceful world. I think we can all agree that we need. Well, Love Has Won really took on to that and said things such as, starships are going to come, and we're, the planet's going to ascend, and Amy's physically going to ascend with her body. But they also weren't really clear. I mean, and they said that they weren't really clear on what that would look like, but it was very imminent. So my brother made the decision, and he didn't just abandon his family. So that's a misconception when people hear my brother's story. He did not abandon his family, leave his wife and kids behind. He set them up very well financially. Set up financially. We're going to put the house up for sale. I'm going to quit my job. You all are going to be well and taken care of. And I'm going to go here because I need to make sure that my family and my friends and my loved ones ascend safely into 5D. It was all purely out of love. So we tried, of course, to talk him out of it. I knew nothing about cults. I knew nothing about coercive control or undue influence. So I did all the wrong things. I know that now. What are you doing? It's so obvious Amy is not God. I'm watching their live streams and I'm very in tune with energy, and I'm picking up, this is not a good vibe. Like, what are you doing? Don't do this. You're going to ruin your kids. I said all of these wrong things. And he left. Actually, ironically, what's the date? Tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary that he kind of tricked his wife, so to speak. They were in the car and she had no idea that he had packed a bag, and they went because they were going to put their house up for sale. And instead of turning left or whatever to go back home, he went right and went to the airport. And so he got on a flight and he went to Mission. So again, my sister-in-law is amazing. She was ahead of the game. She had already been reading books from Steve Hassan, and she's talking like, oh, this is, what we're looking at. And I'm like, no, everything's fine. I'm just a positive person. So I'm like, he's fine. Everything's fine. And I didn't know much about Love Has Won, except that I had seen online that they had a history of abandoning their members in the middle of the mountains with zero belongings when they wanted to go home. That was out there on Reddit. And we knew that. So my brother goes out on his mission trip, and we had very minimal communication with him. But he was there maybe 24 hours. And then he appeared on a live stream. He actually initially missed his flight, and cult experts will tell you that that's your cult identity and your authentic self kind of battling each other, right? There's usually something that kind of, oh, you missed your flight, because your authentic self is trying to tell you, don't go or don't make these decisions. So he ended up going that next day, was there for about 24 hours, appeared on one live stream where he was introduced and looked happy and healthy and had told us it was heaven on earth and everything was great. And he was just so proud, because he's saving humanity. And that next night, he called my mom. He was on foot, and she could hear he was on foot. She could hear him walking on gravel. And he said that he was coming home and he was walking to the airport. But the red flag to that was the airport was like a 3 to 4 hour drive away. And we didn't know their location. We didn't know exactly where in Colorado. We only knew they were about 3 to 4 hours from the airport. So that evening on their live stream, they were laughing and mocking my brother, saying his energy wasn't compatible. No surprise. He's a leader. He's not a follower. I mean, we knew he wouldn't be compatible with their energy. He's not submissive. And I watched their live streams would go on for hours back then. And so it was probably midnight by the time that I finished it. And I messaged my family and said, I think he's in danger. So that next morning, my sister-in-law, agreed that we needed to act quickly. So we called, we just were like, we think he's in this general area. We called all these law enforcement agencies, hospitals, trying to track him. And then ultimately I put up a Facebook post and that went viral. Thank goodness. A stranger ended up contacting me. And meanwhile, at the same time, the hospital contacted my sister-in-law and said that he had just walked out of the hospital. So the story is, and the community will know, if anybody's here from that community. So he was picked up in somebody's yard on private property, but he was deemed medical because they suspected that, and we suspected he was under the influence of like a hallucinogen, or, we were saying like he might have been drugged. We knew nothing about these people other than we were on their live stream. And I'm like typing, where is my brother? We're asking them, where is he? Where is he? And we're blocked. Like we're getting blocked left and right. All of our loved ones. There was zero help in finding him. Now they will tell you a different story, and that's fine. But some of them telling that different story were not actually there. So I was there. I was trying to find my brother, and it was an entire rescue day mission. And we were racing against time, and we knew that. So my sister-in-law hangs up from the hospital. I call the police department. I talk to the sheriff that says, well, and I'm just like, he's missing to us. We suspect that he's been drugged. We need somebody to keep him safe. We're trying to get family there. Well, he had not committed a crime. They couldn't do anything. The hospital, I called them back. I speak to the charge nurse. I'm in the medical field. I tell her the whole story, and she's like, well, he was allowed to leave. Legally, he was allowed to walk out because he was deemed mentally competent, right? If you're not a harm to yourself or others, you can leave. So that's a fail in the system right there. To us, he's missing. We suspect he's under the influence of drugs or has been drugged because this group said, when your energy's not right, you end up dropped on the wrong side of the mountain on the ride of your life. I mean, they gave us these subtle hints that led us and gave us the perception that he was drugged. And he was. They all agreed. They all thought that, he was under the influence of a hallucinogen, but no agency could keep him safe. So this angel, that's what he was, reached out to me and sat with my brother, walked, because my brother was not in his right state of mind. So he was just walking and not communicating for almost 8 hours while someone else drove from Denver and could stay with him until a family member could get there. And even then, they had to kind of play along with him and tell him that we made it to 5D, and until they got him home by ground, because Love Has Won kept all of his belongings. And I know this is going to be upsetting to my Love Has Won current friends. They don't like to hear my brother's story. It's a trigger for them. They say that I'm lying. This is the truth. This was our experience. This was my brother's experience. So they're going to say, why hasn't he spoken out publicly? Well, because he didn't create Rising Above Love Has Won. That's why he's not sharing his story publicly. But everybody in that area and all the people involved know what state he was in. So that's my brother's experience. It took a stranger to find him and for us to play along that we had made it to 5D Earth, and weeks of him being disconnected from them. So cult experts will tell you that in order to deprogram from a cult, you need to be disconnected. So the chats, the live streams, their products. That's all a way that you're kind of plugged in to a coercive group. And so naturally you kind of deprogram. His healing journey was probably, I would say, you know, by the time that he was like resumed his career and life back on track to normal, 6 months. Cult experts will tell you it can take up to a year or more. So coercive control, yeah, I agree, Arian. Very few people do understand how to work. I do need to touch on that. For my brother's healing, we didn't realize how severely brainwashed he is. So brainwashed is not a term that's actually recognized in court systems. So it's undue influence or coercive control. And we didn't realize the level until we were with him. And we were trying to find the best help for him. So psychologists and psychiatrists have zero experience with coercive control. Hospitals, we needed to have him evaluated at a hospital because he had just spent 24 hours, down to 30 degrees in the mountains the night before. And, I call and I give this whole rundown of his history, and he's very fragile, and please don't tell him, that we're not in 5D Earth, because he's going to go right back. And what do? They walk right in and say, your family thinks you're crazy. Amy's not God. Yeah. I mean, they did exact opposite. So much opportunity in this country. I can only speak for our country in coercive control, manipulation. And who do we rely on when you have a loved one that's in a dangerous, life-threatening situation as a result of a group, right, that is so powerful in their coercive control activities? So yeah, that's my brother's experience, and he's great. Life is good for him. And it's definitely something that he's just like, I have no idea how I fell for that. I mean, he donated $10,000 to the Crystal schools that have been collecting donations for years. And there is an online curriculum for that now. But, a lot of people that have been following this group or that are at mission especially have given up so much. And it's all with a good purpose. It's all to save humanity. It's all for something good. And coercive control is very powerful. So it's very easy for people to sit back and say, in the group itself, right? It's easy for them, those current members, to be like, these people don't know what they're talking about. Amanda has no idea what she's talking about. I'm going to go make a rebuttal video right now about all the lies that she's saying, because they're in it. So you don't recognize once you're in it, you don't realize that, I was love bombed in the beginning and I was brought to heaven on earth in this cabin. And, it's very slow and it's very calculated what they're doing to slowly break these members down. So I can keep going, so you can reel me back to keep me on track with the focus of where we're going. Because my brother's experience, I think at the end of the day, was just incredibly eye-opening for so many people, that we realized there is a lack of support, and what we needed at that time in our lives to help my brother is what we created. So that's Rising.
Wow. So that was my question. So he is doing okay now?
Yeah, he is. He's resumed his career. He's doing great. And it's just his story. This is another piece I think is so important, is just a small piece in Love Has Won. When you step back and you look at the history of Amy Carlson, going back many years and how this started, his story was so small, but it was so powerful. And my sister-in-law's vision was that something good would come of this. And that's why we've stayed where we're at. And we've processed our emotions, right? Back to what you said of anger and resentment. Naturally, oh yes, I will be the first to admit that I was on that live stream when he was missing and cussing out Amy and telling her to come, I'm going to fly her out to my house, because I was angry, right? I mean, we definitely had anger and resentment. And then that shifted, and I can go into that at a later point. But a lot of it is just healing and realizing, wow, their experience and their connection and their story within Love Has Won is not as easy and simple as it looks on the outside. And the more that we learned about coercive control, working with these cult experts, and the more we learned about these members by just connecting with their family and their friends, we learned that they were all at a vulnerable time in their lives, and they all started out just like my brother. And so the current events could have been my brother. I mean, so I think it's just so eye-opening when it's happened to you that you can't just walk away. Because if we were to just walk away, we would not have created this incredible network of people, former members, even current members that we've built. You know, I have a little conversation with, and I get they don't trust me, and I get that they think I'm against them. But I think I've proved to them a lot that I'm here, that if they're kicked out because they didn't do something right and they need a meal, I'm here. Not just me, but an incredible group. I might be the face and I might be the voice, but there's an incredible amount of people on the Love Has Won Exposed page, Rising Above side, and even on Reddit that really come together. And from all angles, we support Amy's family, we support Jason's family, we're supporting members, former members. It's all together because love is powerful. It is so powerful. It's a very powerful energy. So when you're talking energy and you're talking about love has won, love does win. That is the truth. And my only ask all this time, even back to when I was on Dr. Phil with Amy, was if you're going to be a nonprofit organization about love, then we're going to be love. We're not going to control these members with restricting calories and restricting their sleep and coercive control and then putting them in life-threatening situations. We're going to be love. And I'm going to force you to be love from what I'm doing right now. And I'm going to check in on you guys. And I'm going to let you all know that I care about you. And I've tried to get them to, hey, let's take me to Denver and let's go snowboarding. You know, let's do life experiences. You can experience life and still bring good, you know, to this world. You can still help us ascend to a higher 5D energy frequency by actually being love and balancing that with real life experiences. You don't have to live within, you know, this little controlled box that they have. They really have.
So, Mike, based on all of your experience, can you weigh in on this and her brother's story and the course of control?
Well, I mean, a couple of things that immediately come to mind to me, Amanda, is that as different as these groups might want to appear, they're very much the same. There has to be a belief system, an ideology, and there has to be a control mechanism. The difference between a cult and frankly, I mean, a sports team can be a cult, folks. So we got to keep in mind that there are destructive organizations and non-destructive organizations. And so what we need to do is kind of try to think through this process of, is the ideology, is the belief system, the daily routine, is it destructive in nature, or is it something that empowers people to become better human beings? And I always think about what we classify as cults versus what we look at in mainstream religion. And if you think about mainstream religion, and you know, there are a lot of people that have lots of problems with mainstream religion, but generally mainstream religion is about looking at a higher power. It's not aggrandizing an individual that's on earth that's leading the group. It's about a more supreme being, and of course, in this case, where Amy, for instance, felt like she was a reincarnated God. That introduces kind of an interesting little twist. But mainstream religion focuses outward on building people, lifting the downtrodden, blessing the lives of the poor, helping grow humanity and lift humanity. A cult is focused on worshiping the leader of the group, and that everything is focused in that direction. Everything is about making them even more esteemed than they themselves may believe they are. And so that's kind of the first thing I start looking at when I try to, in my mind, sort out whether the cult seems destructive or not. Then you have to look at, what is the recruiting mechanism? What is it that caused your brother to lean on that ideology? And you talked about the fact that he kind of had this doomsday belief. And all of a sudden, COVID gave him that final push to say, look, here's the evidence. The end of the world's coming. You got to get things in order and then go off and save your soul, which then introduces another really odd mechanism in many of these cults. And that is this elite position that we have more knowledge, more understanding, more insight, more right to a quick passageway to deity than anyone else. So we really are a special group. But in the process of all that, what they have to do is strip away identity, strip away networks that support people, break people down. And the mechanism seems to be repeated over and over in these groups. It really becomes an intriguing study to just try to understand what's the control mechanism, what is the authoritarian leadership structure, who are the followers, who are the number twos, the number threes, and who are the minions that do all the work for free and the organization makes money. All those things become really interesting. So it's really insightful to hear your brother's story and then to hear the challenge you faced as a family. And I just would compliment you on continuing to try to remain networked with your brother and then immediately get the word out, because you brought up a really interesting thing that will not change in our lifetimes, and that is that adult people can be mentally ill and not get treatment, that adult people can leave home and go off to find the world and never be accounted for and heard from again, and it's not illegal. And to put pressure on law enforcement to say, well, you should have stepped up, or the medical system should have stepped up, would be a bigger infraction on humanity to say we're going to judge and take away people's right to be adult and make decisions. So it becomes really complex. And I'm going to just end with this. Think about this. There are 800,000+ people every single year that disappear for one reason or another. They might go to Vegas because they're mad and they don't ever want to see anyone again, or they might be a victim of a crime. But 800,000 disappear every single year. Now, according to national statistics for the last 30 or 40 years, 83% of them are going to come home. But that's still like 104,000 people every single year that are never heard from again, that go to the other side of the mountain that you're talking about, Amanda, and they're never seen or heard again. And now multiply the family members who sit in anguish wondering where their lost loved one is. And it's just the fact. I mean, 85 or 100,000 people is bigger than 90% of the cities in America.
Wow.
So that's a lot of ramble.
Mike, not to interrupt, but you probably already know this about coercive control being a crime in the UK, right?
It is, and it was just signed as a law this year in Australia as well. And so we're starting to see a shift when it comes to coercive control. But then it becomes, what are the elements of coercive control, and can you prove it?
Right.
And if we, for instance, if we were fortunate enough to have followers of Love Has Won, for instance, to come on with us, there would be as much testimony suggesting that that isn't coercive as there is that they are being coerced. So it becomes really a difficult challenge to prove those things. But when you start adding different kinds of things like incredible weight loss, never having any money to their name for all of the work they're doing, all of these things that would fall within human trafficking kinds of things, then maybe there's some areas where law enforcement could do more.
Agreed. You touched on the human trafficking. That's a big one, because human trafficking definition, right? For any of you watching, can look that up and see how many check boxes you can do that no love has won. Yep. Very true. Can I answer that question, Amanda?
Yeah.
What's your opinion on Father God? I would love to answer that. So, okay, my personal opinion on Amy and Love Has Won is probably unique for most people, because I'm not saying that she's innocent in her behaviors that have been on camera and in her actions, but I've learned a lot. I've connected with Amy's family and I've learned her past. And I think that you know, if you really take a look at Amy, you go all the way back to the very first Father God #1, you'd probably be surprised at kind of how this started and how she may have in fact been in a vulnerable time in her life and became a victim herself. And I told her this on Dr. Phil, that I really felt that she, you know, her and Miguel, the president of Love Has Won, were very strategic in what they were doing. Okay, so Miguel brought the business aspect, right, of trying to make this a business and to, you know, increase the profit. And Amy was, you know, yes, she was not innocent. But if you look back at these initial videos and you see these father gods that truly loved her and truly tried to help, and you all will get to meet one of them on the show, but they really were there for the right reasons. And then you watch Amy's change, taking it back to physical change, you know, her physical change, as well as her mental decline from when Jason joined. It's significant. So I've connected with Jason's family, and I do know his past. And I think it's super, super important because now we're getting a lot of attention from a media perspective about Love Has Won. And everybody reads the headline of Amy's passing and they think, okay, this is over for Love Has Won. It's not. So Jason brings, in my opinion, the physical threat, the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse. We've seen it on camera. This is not me making it up. So for that rebuttal video that's coming, this is facts. It's out there. We've seen it. And I've personally connected with members, one in particular that did return home for several months. And the reason he left was because of his fear, you know, and being put in a dangerous situation where another member said, you know, Jason had me go out and sleep in the snow for 24 hours, you know, in the Colorado mountains. He had me go spearfishing in Kauai in a rip current. And I realized I'm going to die. These are members that I connected with and helped, you know, as they, you know, left and they're still home. So while I don't hope that he would never physically harm somebody, he has put these members, typically the men, in dangerous, life-threatening situations. Jason's the one that told my brother he had to go off and fight 3 days of darkness in the mountains. That started my brother, and the last thing my brother did was take a drink of his water. And then he was, you know, presenting as being under the influence of a hallucinogen. So I'll let you, you know, come up with your own assumption there. So I think that Jason is what makes it dangerous. Absolutely. And it's important to realize that these core these mission members of 20 something people are all on the right path from a spiritual perspective in wanting to do what's right in their heart. Okay. And I know that's a whole nother topic of at what point, you know, are you not a victim of coercive control, but now you recognize it and you're part of the scam. I know people will say that, but if you take a step back and you look at how Love Has Won was structured, it was really Amy, Miguel, and Jason that were running the show. Okay. On different levels. And so what we're seeing now is this shift, and we knew this was coming. I mean, I said this several weeks ago before Amy's death was confirmed. We're seeing a shift. We're seeing rebranding and rebuilding. So as long as Jason's involved in that, there's a danger. There's a danger. If Miguel's involved in that, there's going to be manipulation and coercive control.
There's an interesting dynamic, and for those who may not understand this particular organization, when Amy died, it left the kingpin of the organization as a vacancy. And so when that happens, what I have always worried about in an organization that is destructive in nature is not as much in this case, the god or the prophet of the group. I don't worry about them as much as I do the minions underneath who want to prove allegiance to that leader, that they are so invested in the belief system or the ideology that they are willing to do whatever it is that those individuals may say or do. So when that key person disappears, there becomes a process of replacing, and it's not by vote, and oftentimes it's by some form of authority that people believe is invested in one particular individual. But I suspect right now there's an incredible process going on, even maybe as short as several months ago, as Amy's health declined, and they knew that change was going to occur. What becomes really interesting is that they, in essence, tried to create a shrine out of this body and tried to somehow keep the body preserved in a way that they could do something. Generally, I found that is a way for a person to say, oh, I've received revelation that Amy has indicated I'm the next one in charge or whatever. So it's going to be really interesting to watch the structure of this group, or any group that's like this, that is going through now a change in the guard.
Yeah.
So kind of leading into this question, because this one jumps ahead a little bit. I did want to talk about Amy. For those people who don't know, and we've touched on it a little bit, if I understand correctly, she started this in 2006. Is that right?
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And left, she had 3 kids and left.
Yeah. So if I can expand on that a little bit, I researched Love Has Won like zero, right? So I have an incredible team that's really done. My role with Rising Above Love Has Won has been connecting with family and friends and members, and doing exactly what I'm doing today. But after my brother went missing last year in May of 2020, shortly after, within just a few weeks, I was contacted immediately by a journalist from a local newspaper wanting to actually do a story when he was missing, but then he was found. But I still connected with her. And so she mentioned that the rumor in that area, which is a very small town, that she was deceased. So I reached out to the Saguache County Sheriff's Office. This is the same sheriff's office that's currently handling all of the legal issues. And they confirmed that she was deceased in June of 2020. So I reach and I start researching, and I tracked down one of Amy's sisters and contacted her and said, I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, but I've been told by a journalist and by a sheriff's office that your sister is deceased. And I'm concerned because there's this group called Love Has Won that has been exploiting her as if she's still alive for financial gain. And I feel like you need to know as her family. So imagine how that conversation went. Very tearful. My brother's experience was traumatic, very traumatic for me. And it was, this conversation happened like 2 weeks after that. And I'm a sister calling a sister, telling her that, she's deceased. So we shared tears. And I'm walking her through the process that this sheriff's office is helping with to obtain a death certificate, only to find out that Amy's still alive. So that's an issue. Anyways, so in speaking with Amy's family, I got to learn a lot about her, and they had not been, they couldn't keep up with her. She moved all around and she was in multiple different groups. So Love Has Won was not the name way back when, but essentially I found out through connecting with her family that she was at a vulnerable time in her life. And she did find a man online who told her that she was Mother God. That would be Father God number 1. And essentially, he did the same thing. So your Mother God brought her in. And then, of course, what happens? Your ego takes that, and it's the same concept with Love Has Won. They're all told that they were, famous people, reincarnated, and that there are these royal angels that are here to save humanity. So the same thing with Amy. And then, over time, it just became more of the kind of power, and then it broke away. And that's when Miguel joined. And so Miguel and Amy then shifted, and there was a fallout, and that's all, public. There are a lot of videos. But if you look back at Amy's earlier videos, I truly do think that she started with the right intention. I think that she really did want love. And, you'll meet again, another Father God. And at that time, it was not what it is today. Or was. We can't speak for what it is now that Amy's deceased, but what it was up until Amy's significant physical decline, it's definitely had shifted tremendously.
Well,
I would say that's fairly consistent with many closed societies, is that many of the members are truly pursuing what they believe is a pathway to having more light and knowledge than somebody else, to be more spiritual than someone else, to be more in tune than someone else. The problem with these organizations too are there are predators who find that they can manipulate those who are in pursuit of those kinds of things. And so it becomes a breeding ground to come in and take advantage and exploit people. And that's what becomes so dangerous. And so this is why it's so important that religions, cults, organizations, bridge clubs remain transparent, that there are no secret societies and no secrets within these, but that becomes a way for people to go in and ask questions and be able to do so non-threateningly. The problem is a destructive cult will never do that, because I love the quote by Dr. Janja Lalich, who she and Margaret Singer in an incredible book said the bottom line is, if cults knew from the get-go, or if people joining cults knew from the get-go what they were in for, they would never join. And that's really the secret. You got to bring them in, surround them with love, make them feel like this is the most important thing. Validate whatever need it is or whatever weakness it is, whatever the chink in their armor is, and then exploit that to the point that they then strip them of everything that supports them so that you can then control them. It just is repeated over and over again.
Yeah, to that point, when you book a session with them, that's what they're identifying. They're getting to know you, right? And you become vulnerable through these conversations and just opening up to people that you think have good intentions. And I truly believe that the members do have good intentions. It's those behind the scenes, Amy and Miguel and, Jason, that take that good intention right out of it. So, yep, you're spot on.
So for those of you who have not seen these videos, I'm assuming most of you have. We talked about this before when we were planning the show, but I can't show them on this particular live. I do think that they're important to mention, however. They are definitely shocking, I would say, and gives you a great idea of what's going on. Did that level of, I don't know, I'm going to go ahead and use the word abuse, because I saw the videos with my own eyes. So, I mean, you've got the things that are going on with people there. You've got the animals, that video that we saw. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go to the links in the description and see exactly the videos I'm talking about. You've got the one with the child locked in the closet. So did that, basically what I'm understanding is that kicked up when Father God, the newest Father God, Jason, got there. It wasn't like that before.
Yeah, I mean, somebody in the comments that's also, very familiar can correct me if I'm wrong, but in my opinion, what I've witnessed was definitely a significant shift in just what you said. So, these hour-long live streams and commanding them to do things, commanding them to cry. So many people love these members. Strangers, we're strangers. Here I am. I mean, my sister-in-law, we would help any of them. We would help any of them get home. We've tried to help, those that wanted to leave get home. They're going to tell you they're fine. We're fine. This is our job. We're taking on humanity. This is what we're contracted to do. And they're just so proud because they don't see it. They don't understand coercive control. I didn't understand it. Nobody understands it until you take a step back and you're open to learning. And so when you're so closed-minded in your beliefs that you're not open to learning and you discredit somebody's experience because of what you're being told by somebody sitting next to you who wasn't there, that's concerning. But the videos are out there and they're abusive. And, there's a member whose nose was broken. There are members that, a member was threatened to be made a quadriplegic. The cat video, the child in the closet video, while they will tell you that the details were different, there are people that I've connected with that were there in that room. The white dress ceremony, I've connected with a member that was at the white dress ceremony. I just spoke to one of the Loved Has Won members for 6 hours on the phone last week. And, not with that, not with any intention to do anything negative, but to just try to understand what they're experiencing so I can see how to help, right? Because we're seeing the abuse, but they don't. They think this is part of their contract. They've been programmed to think that way. Well, they're actually taught not to think, they're taught to feel. But if you truly feel into your heart, because I am spiritual, I do feel into my heart. That's why when I do these interviews, I don't think about what I'm going to say or respond to you. I don't look at what the plan is. I just talk from my heart, genuine. That is what I really want to empower them to do. Because if you really, really are truly, growing from a spiritual level, and you connect within and you just listen to yourself and you start spinning, it's because you're connecting those dots and your intuition is recognizing that something is not right. And when you're surrounded by a group that has to constantly spin you back in, book your spin back in session, no, that's your indication that this is not right. And so, yeah, the abuse is definitely significantly gotten worse with Jason. He is 100% on an ego trip. Yes.
So I had a question for you, Mike. In your experience with this, is this pretty much par for the course, or is this, worse than the other ones you've seen?
Well, the videos would be representative of what other individuals who have fled successfully cult environments that are abusive in nature, the videos would be representative of what they testify to, what they say happened in those. That is alarming to see what they're willing to make public versus what even might happen behind closed doors. And that's troubling to me. It's troubling to me anytime people are treated in such a way. As someone who is a Christian, it is so anti to what I would envision a church or an ideology to do. Usually you see these groups that are building people up and looking for what they are capable of and what they can become. This is more a process when you watch it of belittlement, and I don't quite understand it. And there might be ideology that supports why they do that. And, to us, we often will find ourselves saying, it just doesn't make sense. But I guarantee it makes perfect sense to them. And so for us to make these kinds of calls, we really don't understand enough. The thing that's always troubling to me is that when people get in, it becomes more difficult to get out than to get in. And that's another big difference between mainstream religions and what we see in these cult type organizations. People are required to travel in pairs so that there's a system of protection to keep one from fleeing, or you can't get permission to drive the car unless you go through a lieutenant within the organization who gives you the authority. There's always a control mechanism, and that's always troubling to me.
Yeah. And, even to touch on that, so respectfully, I will say that, in my opinion, Amy displayed classic narcissism. And I felt that way, last year, and just watching her behavior. And if you know anything about narcissists, right, they don't feel like we do. Their relationships are not genuine like us, right? And they think they can do no wrong. And then with that, of course, can also come, kind of the Munchausen, where, something's always wrong, or you're always ill, or you have stage 5 cancer, to the bone, things like that. So I think when you take that kind of all into account, that it's just kind of the perfect mix of where we were up until last year. Now Jason's, not on the live streams anymore. We're not seeing so much of that. But to your point, who knows what's happening, behind closed doors. So,
yeah. For anyone who's seen the chicken parm video, that was a good display of her narcissism, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, you think about this, and we do jump to the narcissistic personality type a lot. This idea of absolute importance and everything is about me, and if we're not talking about me, it doesn't make sense that we're even talking. What many experts in cult research believe too is that there is a level of schizophrenia involved, and so when you start seeing people who declare themselves to be a reincarnated 500 plus time deity, it fits nicely within some of these parameters. But again, it just goes back to this idea that there's this single individual that everyone's worshiping, and that really troubles me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't ever I worship Amy, love her, live all together, have an organic garden. Heck, I would do that. I want out of the 3D world. Like, I love making holistic products, right? But when you have somebody behind the scenes that's aware of what's going on, from a financial perspective, and you're turning it into the business. And to your point, you're making all of these products and you're doing all of this work and you're doing these live streams and you're on this very restrictive sleep schedule and you're not getting any type of reimbursement for it. You don't have access to any funds. And then you are given a new identity just to what you said, a different name. Really, this is where it's so important for loved ones to know how to communicate and keep that support with the members, because it really is just like, you don't get it. You're not awake yet. You don't know what's going on. I'm really trying to save humanity. You'll get it someday, and it just drives this huge wedge. And it's like, really, you could balance both of that. If we don't need to have the abuse and the control and the breaking people down and watching them significantly lose weight. You can balance worshiping somebody as God and making holistic products and having spiritual sessions and still have a relationship with your family. Still pick up the phone and reassure your mom, I'm good, I'm safe, I love you. I mean, that's love, right? Like, so yeah, for us, it was just more of trying to create this just place of support. I want to answer to Sherry Ann of what resources are available. So on our website, we have a lot of resources, geared more towards loved ones and friends and family, but we also have a fresh start toolbox for members that are wanting to, need help to get back on their feet if they're wanting to leave. And they all know that they can message Rising Above Love Has Won on any of our social media through our website. And I'm out there on Facebook on all of those sites as well. So they can always message me directly. I think some of them have my phone number. So we are here if nobody else is there. We are here, and we just, we want everybody to be safe. So
yeah, and I might just say from my experience that you really need to be cautious. That old saying of "he who's good with a hammer thinks everything is a nail" really falls into play when you're talking about cult characteristics. Deprogramming. There are some wonderful deprogrammers. Rick Ross, fantastic deprogrammer, understands the dynamic, but each individual case is going to be different. The amount of time they've spent in is going to make a difference. What the belief system was beforehand, whether there's total disruption and separation from the life that they lived before, where they throw away all of their photographs and memories and phones and everything else, are all going to play a significant role in how you help bring someone back out. And frankly, the frightening thing is, once they're in, if they're not communicating and they're not working at the downtown 7-Eleven, your ability to interact and kind of remind them of who they used to be is really going to become difficult. And most importantly, the thing that I've found in criminal cases and in cases involving cult characteristics and behaviors is that going and telling them, "I told you so," is like the worst thing you can possibly do. Think about if you were to put yourself or someone you loved into severe jeopardy, having to admit that to somebody is really a difficult thing to do. And for a cult member who gives up everything, your brother, for instance, who gives up everything, to ask them to turn around and say, "I was wrong," is like one of the cruelest things you can do. That's a pathway they have to figure out on their own of how they're going to deal with the fact that they made a poor choice.
Agreed. No, you're so spot on. It's learning how to communicate effectively while being supportive through a healing process. And that can be years. I've connected with amazing, incredible people that were a part of Love Has Won that are all at different stages of their healing journey. And it's really just listening, because everybody's had their own experience. And I will tell you that people will tell you they've had a positive experience from being at Mission, that they had a life changing event, or that they took something from that led to their growth in life, because every experience serves a purpose, right? So communication and learning how to communicate effectively is so critical. And to answer the question about, do I think my brother is still vulnerable to this group? No, I don't. He's major props to his wife. She immediately consulted experts, and we worked with Rick Ross very closely, and he's good. So, but it's a different timeline for everybody, and it really does require a lot of love, compassion, patience with your loved ones. So
I see a lot of questions about what happened to Amy. I did have a question for you. I don't know if you even know the answer to this. When I was watching the videos, and it actually was the one where there was a member being yelled at about the chicken parm versus the meatballs thing. Mm-hmm. And there's a part where Jason, Father God, leans in and whispers, mother is dying. But the date on that video is September of 2020, I believe. Mm-hmm. So was that something that was known, or I don't know. I thought that was an interesting comment.
Yeah, they had been saying that her ascension, or that she was dying, was very imminent. And their word choices were always very interesting, because we had heard things like, she's actively dying. I'm in the medical field, so that she was never actively dying. But if you think about it from a perspective, right, of hurry and get here. I mean, Jason was on a video in July of 2020. We are your only ticket to heaven. Give up everything now. Money doesn't matter. I remember specific members saying this, right? Money doesn't matter. We're not going to need it in 5D. Give it all up now. Give it to God. We got to get that bread for God. We got to get to 5D. Okay. I'm currently supposed to have been recycled to the galactic sun. That's what was supposed to happen to me after Amy ascended. And she did ascend, right? Everybody has a different, definition. Your soul ascends into a different dimension, right? After death, or to heaven, or however your belief is. So I kind of got off topic and lost my train of thought. But I wanted to go back to, that was in Kauai. And that's when they had started, they were on the run. I mean, let's just call it what it is. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the current members, but they went on the run after the article, right at the same time that the article came out about my brother, which was also when Jason's family was requesting a wellness check because of his behavior that was extremely concerning on their live streams. And so they fled, they went to Kauai, and Amy was always dying. So on April 16th, I'll just share. I know a lot of people don't know this, but on April 16th, their member said that she was having difficulty breathing. So I worked all day to try to get an ambulance to her, because that was something that they had not said. Amy, mother's dying, she's dying. We had heard that for a year, but now she's having difficulty breathing and her eyes are rolling in the back of her head. So I worked all day on April 16th to try to get her an ambulance. And her members lied and said that she wasn't there, and they hadn't seen her in a week, and they didn't know where she was at. And we all know that that's not true. So either I was too late and she had already passed away, or she was very near death, which is so unfortunate, because if y'all would have just accepted the help, we could have avoided, legal issues. But now here we are, right? And now you've got a grieving family, which is Amy's family, that is waiting on her identity to be confirmed because she was so decomposed. It's really sad.
So on April 16th, and you were told that you tried to get an ambulance there. I did see a video. I know we all talked about this. I did see a video where they admitted that she had asked for help. Am I correct?
Yes, that was last year. Last year, they admitted on a live stream that there was a point. Actually, I think it's important, and this takes it back to coercive control and how powerful it is. There were times, Amy's not innocent. You know, at no point does anybody want to say that Amy was innocent in her role. It's out there. We know what her role was. But there was a time where she was trying to tell members that I am not Mother God. This is all bullshit. This is a scam. And her members, you know that, you know, you are God, right? So how powerful is coercive control, that you were so good at this that you've convinced your followers of this false truth. And so you've asked to be taken to the hospital and you were declined that. And that's not right. I mean, we're human, regardless if she was God, she's in a human body. She deserved to have medical treatment. She deserved to be evaluated at the end of her life and being given the option for an inpatient hospice treatment where there are medications that would ease her breathing. And what's sad is we sat and we didn't sit. We were fighting for her. We were asking for wellness checks. We were working with her family. Her family was begging them to take her to the hospital. But unfortunately, all of our attempts failed and she died a slow, painful death as a result. And I mean, you can watch, I mean, we watched her significantly decline. It's just incredibly sad.
So we don't know exactly still what happened to her.
Autopsy result has not been publicly released, and I expect that it won't until her identity has been able to be confirmed, which is going to take time because of her decomposing body, which is really sad when there's a member that's saying that she had a pulse when she was found. That's not true. And that member wasn't there. See what I'm saying? Right. At some point, you have to take a step back and really evaluate and listen to your heart of, well, this doesn't make sense. And, you know, mainstream media is not where I heard of Amy passing away. That's not how I heard about it. You know, so where members want to be like, you're falling for mainstream media, which is the cabal. No, that's actually not how we heard about it. Yeah. So.
Well, it hit mainstream media, I believe it was April 28th. So from the 16th to the 28th, we don't really know. I guess we'll have to see what happens there. And then for those of you who don't know, on the 28th, that's when they received the call. Investigators did. They came out to the house in Moffett and found her, you know, in the condition she was in, which was mummified with the shrine that they had made. Do you know any more about that than what?
Yeah. So her bedroom. So these members believed that that location. So that was the mission house, the cult house. That was their main location for a while. The big, beautiful cabin that they did a lot of live streams with was a rental. And they're no longer there. So they left her room in the state that it was in because they thought it was going to be a museum someday. So, yeah, it's really sad, right? Because there are members that truly loved Amy that were caught up in this and now are facing legal issues, who are some of the biggest victims. You're talking about chicken Parmesan video, right? These people, you can tell, you can see it. You know, I don't need anybody to tell me anything about what's going on. I physically can see what's going on. But in their heart, right, like I thought I was doing the right thing with what Amy would want and remembering that she was their God. So I think that they took her back. I don't know. I wasn't there and I can't speak obviously with facts, but I'm sure they put her back in that room. And it probably did look like a shrine to law enforcement if they had never seen a picture of it. I mean, I had already seen a picture of that room and it was referred to as the healing space, and they thought it would be a museum. So then yes, you know, the Christmas light thing, but I just want to like squash all the rumors about her eyes. Like there's a lot of rumors going around about her eyes, which are not true. So she had been deceased for a few weeks likely, and they were waiting on her to ascend. These people truly believed and when she ascended, even though they didn't know what it was going to look like, they really felt that it was going to physically ascend. So yeah, it's a very sad story.
So Mike, what you were saying earlier, if I understand you correctly, I want to make sure, with this whole shrine and having her there, and if I understand correctly, they drove her from another state to Colorado deceased.
So I don't know that. I mean, that was my question. I think Amanda, Vanessa, is, do we know how she got there. Was she alive when she arrived, or was she did she actually die in Northern California and was transported, which creates some federal issues, which will create some charges at some point as part of all of this, I would suspect. But then I guess as an investigator, my questions go much deeper, especially from a behavioral perspective, is what was the process of mummification?
Mm-hmm.
Was it that she was just so thin and so small that it was easy for this body to start to dry naturally? And I don't want to be too gruesome, but I've studied mummies for a lot of my career.
Mm-hmm.
There's a natural process, and in Egypt, they actually used to bury people in the sand because it would just extract all of the fluid from the body and create this mummified process. But the body, even a thin body, will start to stink as the decomposition goes on. So were there measures put in place to preserve the body? And those are questions, that unless you've heard directly from some of the members, we probably won't hear until we get toxology back to find out what the condition of the body and what the chemicals are, if there are chemicals in the body.
Yeah, I have to remind myself it was an active investigation, or it is, but so I can say that she was last seen alive by someone outside of the cult on April 10th. So sometime between, and that was in Northern California. But to your point, she was extremely thin. I mean, we were watching her slowly die, and she was aware that she was dying. And according to this person, she was at peace with it. I just wish she would have had the chance to tell the truth to her members.
Most people who are dying a slow death are at peace by the time it finally comes, especially if they're emancipated like that,
right?
Or emancipated, I'm sorry, emaciated like that. And I guess that really keeps dragging me back to, was there some effort put into play outside of putting makeup on and other things to try to preserve and to take care of the decomposition process? Because it doesn't matter how skinny you are, your skin's still going to break down. And 2 weeks is starting to become a pretty significant amount of time. So
Right. Yeah. And then to your point earlier, Mike, I'm sure the members were actually waiting for her physical ascension, but maybe there was also a piece of, and this is just my opinion, manipulation going on by Jason. And, as far as what you were talking about earlier, saying that maybe she would speak to him, or the kind of the whole transition of power, I thought that whole point's interesting.
Yeah, it really becomes the interesting part of the behavior of the cult, how revelation occurs in the cult, and what that process is. That pulse that someone says they felt was at that time when then she whispers, "You're in charge." Those things become kind of crazy notions that you have to kind of sort out, but that probably doesn't change anything. The question is going to become, who will take over? What's the control structure? Who's vying to be number two, thinking of who's going to be number one? And that could get pretty interesting. And when you look at the possibility of properties being held by one person versus another, all of a sudden, and this is time for another show, but all of a sudden there is a lot of dynamic here that start to paint a more clear picture of what the motivation might be behind a lot of things. So
Very true.
And I know we're going to go, we decided it's going to be 2 parts because there's so much to go into. There's still so much more of the story to tell, and more stories to tell, which we're going to hear. We're going to have some guests on too. And I know we have Andrew that's been backstage. So I wanted to bring him on if we could, and just introduce him. And if you would, Amanda, we can kind of get into what we're going to dig into next Tuesday. Hi, Andrew.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank
I've
you.
actually seen your interviews and other things, so I do know some of your background. But for those who don't, do you mind just introducing yourself? And
Sure, sure. So my name's Andrew. I joined Love Has Won, which was actually the first contact ground crew team back in November of 2014. My life had kind of opened up in a certain way that, as Mike said, I kind of was in a vulnerable place, just looking, really for help in my awakening. And I just kind of started to fall into the trap. I came across the chat rooms, and they were speaking a message that really resonated with me. And I didn't intend to join them at first, but it was something I was considering. Amy really started to get this notion that I needed to be there, and I ended up dropping everything and joining the team. I spent about 10 months with them, and it was a very difficult thing. And now what's happening is really sad for me, because I cared about her very much.
I really loved her. Andrew was a father God that really loved her and really took care of her. And thank you for being here, because he's been such an incredible voice. And, everybody has their own experience. And when members are comfortable speaking up and sharing theirs, it's so powerful for the rest of the followers or former followers that are in the chats and that are not ready to publicly share. But Andrew's experience was powerful. Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome. It's sad to see, the way things transpired for her. And there was always so much potential for this group to do good things. And I always really believed that when people started to worship Mother God is really where things went south. Because when I was there 5 or 6 years ago, we couldn't imagine anything like what's taking place now. We couldn't imagine that happening. I speak to the members that were there with me, and we just can't believe it. Had they been able to just focus on the message that they're talking about and not really worship any one person, then they probably could have helped people and done a lot of good things. Because everybody that joins has really good intentions. I know I did. But at some point, things changed.
I want to thank you, number one, for having the courage to come on and talk about that, because it required a lot of self-reflection for yourself to think through what was it that made you vulnerable at that moment. So my question for you is, what was it that empowered you 10 months later to say, I now need to get back into more mainstream life?
Well, honestly, it didn't take all that long to really figure it out. Maybe for me, it only took a few weeks to really realize I was in the middle and caught up in really one huge delusion, to tell you the truth. And it was really hard because part of you wants to play along because you don't want to, create resistance in the house. Speaking out makes you the target of a lot of ridicule. You want to get along with the people who are living in a house with you. You want to have that camaraderie. And it was tough to speak out, but I got to a point, and certain things happened, which I'm sure you'll hear about, and maybe we could talk about when we have some more time. But things happened that really caused me to come to a place where I realized I had to speak out there with the team, not so much on camera, but behind the scenes, and really hold Amy accountable for a lot of the hypocrisies and a lot of the things that didn't make sense. And it got to a point where I realized I wasn't going to be able to stop what was happening. I wasn't going to be able to change her, which I really tried to do. I realized I just had to move on. I had to go home.
Yeah,
I'm really proud of you. And I want to ask you a question. We often talk when we try to make sense of this from the outside looking in. We talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which talks about, down at the base level, we got to be able to breathe before we care about doing something like eating, and we got to have a place to live before we feel, like doing something like get an education or something like that.
Right.
And cults are experts at dropping us to the lowest denomination on this Maslow hierarchy that says, I just gotta breathe. I gotta just have a little bit of food in my belly. I don't even have the capacity of my mind to think about making a decision or reaching self-actualization where I say, no, I deserve more than this position I'm in. And we see this happen time and time again. Just today, I was talking to a woman who is a survivor of a cult, and she made a very impressive statement to me. She said, I eventually chose to participate in the criminal activity and everything else because my choice was go back to an abusive marriage or put up with a group that loved me, acted like they cared about me, they fed me, they gave me a roof over my head. If all it meant was that I had to break a few laws along the way, that was pretty easy to do. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, you find yourself in this perfect storm. You know, when you join the team, you have your family who doesn't know how to deal with something like this, as Amanda talked about before, and they tend to push you away, right? So they don't really look like people you can turn to in that moment. And on the other hand, you have everybody at the team, and Amy with you know, her typical, you know, you have to cut off your family. I mean, that's the message. That's the first thing that I remember happening, and that she made clear was that your family doesn't understand. They're angry at you. They're trying to bring you back. You need to cut them off. That was the first thing that happened. And you find yourself in this place where, you know, I showed up because I wanted to grow as a person. I felt like I was on this mission to really be with people who would help me understand maybe some of the layers of defense mechanisms I had created as I grew up to protect myself. And I thought they were really good at helping me, you know, spot those things and maybe figure out how to get through them. But you find that everything is really set up to make it impossible for you to leave. You know, I left everything behind. I didn't have a job or anything to go back to. I didn't have any money. You know, staying was easy. You know, but staying meant you had to fall in line. You find yourself in really an impossible position.
I am so proud of you for having the courage to step away.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it didn't feel like courage leaving so much. It really felt like courage to stay, and that might be different for other people. But it got to the point where the only thing that kept me there really was how much I cared about this girl, because I really wanted to help her. You know, I knew I could go back home after a while. I realized that I wasn't really stuck there, you know, and had no family to go back to. But I stayed because I wanted to try and help her. And I thought that was possible. I mean, on a couple of occasions, I even got her to admit she wasn't Mother God. I mean, this was a common thread that continued to happen. You know, she would have these moments. You think you could break her out of it. And I thought I had a chance, but I eventually had to give up on that idea.
Well, I hope you will, if you consider coming back on Tuesday, I'd like to hear more about your story. And we're going to have some other guests on as well.
Sure.
Like Mike said, I appreciate you coming on. And I know that does take a lot of courage. And I can see, you know, your pain. And I'm sure this is a hard time for you with everything going on and in the media.
You gotta come back.
Cool.
Yes.
I'll definitely come back. I've got some really interesting and fascinating stories to tell you guys. And I think that they'll help to shed some light on this. And Amanda's done an incredible job. And I hope at the end of this, we're able to help some people either, you know, avoid falling into these traps, just help understand them, or maybe even help some of these members to have the courage to leave.
Well, I can tell you just from looking at the chats, you are helping people already. So hang in there. Next week will be very exciting, I think.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we're going to do. For those of you watching, I encourage you to go to the links, like I said at the beginning, but if you just joined us, or and go look at the videos, go look at the resources, go check out the groups before you come back, because next week we're going to hear more about the stories, kind of why everyone's so concerned about everything going forward, the transitions of power, and how you can help and what you can do if you have a loved one involved. So I appreciate you all being here so much tonight.
Thanks for having me.
It's been very interesting.
Oh, thanks for the invitation, Vanessa.
Thank you. And thank you guys all for watching. And like I said, we're going to be same day next week at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And you will have more time to talk to them, I know. And I apologize for anyone I missed the super chats or anything like that. I was just kind of trying to focus here on what was being said. Next week, you'll have more of an opportunity to interact and ask some questions. So thank you very much. And appreciate you guys being here, and have a great night.
Good night, everybody.